to Infinity Podcast, your podcast for all your Marvel Cinematic Universe needs. I'm one of your hosts, Rashad. I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Robert, and also Zach.
Oh, I thought you were about to introduce yourself in some other way. Like I'm Rob, and I'm also this, but no.
I suppose it was misleading the way I did that, but
Yeah, I was expecting like a whole monologue. What were you doing?
nothing.
I thought you had titles.
I mean, I could make up some stuff, but not right now. I don't know.
All right, so for a short, I guess, summation of the podcast that we'll be doing for the next upcoming 17 weeks, we will be doing kind of like a review / retrospective on the entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I guess technically just the movies. Maybe down the line we might touch on the Netflix TV shows and also S.H.I.E.L.D. But for right now, just the main line Cinematic Universe movies. And we'll be doing one review of the movies a week. Hopefully every Saturday they will be released. That's kind of up in the air for right now, but I guess we'll see. But today we will be going over Ironman 1.
Oh man, so it's been 10 years almost since this movie came out. It came out in April of 2008. I can't it's sort of nuts to me that it's been a decade that we've had this cinematic universe.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been going on for an absurd amount of time. It's been a crazy amount of movies, and also it's been nuts that they've been able to keep the continuity so straight. Like, the way, especially from watching this movie and also recently rewatching the Avengers, how they kind of foreshadowed and seeded in a bunch of things. It always makes me think, like, was this stuff intentional, or was this like kind of like, oh, we can just throw in a little nod to such and such, or Iron Man 1, or a nod to, Guardians of the Galaxy?
Well, I think we could probably say that most of it is intentional, since Kevin Feige has been involved from day one with this and every subsequent Marvel movie to one degree or another.
Yeah, I think some of it's probably improvisational, but I think I remember seeing like charts like years ago where people were charting out the path of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and people were mentioning Infinity War, or have been mentioning Infinity War for years now. So, even though some of it was probably connected like later after the fact, I do think they've been trying to build up to this for a while.
Well, I mean, that's how you do it. If any company knows anything about continuity, it's Marvel.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Like, the comic book business is the perfect, I guess, way to plan out and prototype, like planning a whole I guess at this point, decade long single story arc in a way that hadn't really been done before. Although I guess you could sort of look at, I was thinking, because I watched the Lord of the Rings movies this week recently, that that's sort of a prototype kind of thing, even though that's just based on a book series. It was one of those, they shot all of them like back to back and released them over the course of several years in the same way that they've done some of these movies.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my Silmarillion adaptation though.
Oh man, that's just never gonna happen.
I'm kidding. I know that's not gonna happen. It'd be ridiculous.
It would be better suited for television these days, for HBO or somebody like that. But
yeah, I mean, that's what I've been hearing. I haven't really read the Silmarillion, but I heard that it might be kind of difficult to translate that to a movie.
Yeah, no, it's more like it's kind of like a history book for Middle Earth, more or less.
Yeah.
But on the subject of continuity in general, though, you guys ever read or heard of Super Gods? It was a nonfiction book that Grant Morrison wrote about like the history of the comic industry.
I have not heard of that.
No.
Well, one of the things he talks about in there that I thought was really interesting was that Marvel was, like, back in the 60s, the company that kind of like invented continuity. Like, they like created from like the genesis of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby doing those things, that Spider-Man operated in the same universe as Iron Man, and they both operated in the same universe as the Fantastic Four and all this other stuff. They had this idea of all of their stuff being interconnected, like from the beginning, but DC never really intended that to happen. But it was because of like the success of Marvel's continuity that they tried to bring all of the DC superheroes together after the fact because, well, based on what Grant Morrison said is in there, Batman and Superman were never really meant to occupy the same universe, which makes sense, given the kind of characters they are.
Oh yeah, their power levels are way different. Like their whole approach to hero is not like they're just too different to. And actually, that's funny that he says that because that's kind of borne out. I think in part why Warner Brothers has had such a hard time making a cinematic universe there that it would follow that DC never intended that to be the case in the first place. So
yeah, and I mean, I feel like especially in the comic book aspect, you can really see that with the Flash because they had like the Golden Age version of the character with Jay Garrett, and then you also had Barry Allen, and then they kind of just established that it just so happened they're on two different Earths, and that spawned out their multiverse, and I feel like that was kind of their way of dealing with the, I guess, non-existent continuity. They just established, it's a multiverse, and that there's different Earths, and you have different characters occupying the same mantle, but they won't interfere or have any contact with each other until later on when they crossed over all the multiverses and opened up gateways and vibrated through time and space.
If there's somebody whose job it is at DC to keep track of all that, I feel bad for them because they have so many multiverse worlds and they've all got numbers, and oh man, that's rough.
Well, I guess now they've got, what is it, just the post New 52, it's still just the 53 universes that they have?
Well, yeah, because Marvel and DC tend to do this from time to time. So recently DC did the DC Rebirth, and I know we're super off topic, but wrap this thing around. DC did the DC Rebirth where they essentially ended the multiverse because the New 52 brought back the 52 because they seem to do this every few decades, I guess. With Final Crisis, they ended all of the multiverse with the death of the Flash, Barry Allen. Then in the New 52, they brought back the 52 universes. And then with Rebirth, they kind of condensed the 52 universes to one perfect universe that kind of had everything that you loved and enjoyed and all the continuity back. Marvel did a similar thing where recently they had Battleworld, which is pretty interesting because essentially Dr. Doom, I can't remember, he either got the Infinity Gauntlet or he got some power of the god. He pretty much became a god. I think it was the Infinity Gauntlet that did it. And he combined and kind of converged all of Marvel's multiverses because the way they handled different realities was that it was infinite. Whereas DC had it more so where there were only 52. So he decided to converge all of the universes and have a battle world. So all the universes duked it out to see who would survive. And at the end of that, that's how we got Marvel Now, essentially, which is why you have Miles Morales as Spider-Man alongside Peter Parker. You have Old Man Logan in the main Marvel universe. They kind of just condensed everything that was good into one universe to just make it easier for continuity.
Yeah, that sounds like somebody was just trying to clean house.
Essentially. They have to do that at least every 30 years. And then the fans complain, and then they bring back the multiverse again to give them all the weird characters.
See, I wonder if that's where they're heading. So we started this whole MCU with Iron Man, and we're leading up to Infinity War, which is probably going to wipe some of this slate clean. Like they've already said that the story's going to be very different going forward from Infinity War. So we start here with Iron Man, and I don't want to, because we don't know, but it feels like they might be setting the stage to get rid of him post Infinity War or have it be a different person.
That makes sense. Outside of, the lore and the comic books and everything, I know Robert Downey Jr. is getting tired of the character. So I think they might be looking for a big way to phase him out where it doesn't feel too weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, because say I watched this movie for the first time in probably almost a decade. And the thing that I was realizing is for Marvel, because, so Marvel started this MCU with Iron Man, and that was pretty much due to two parts. One, he's a popular character that people know, but also because they sold off their kind of A-tier characters to different studios. So they didn't have access to X-Men, like we all know. Didn't have access to Spider-Man. They didn't have access to the Fantastic Four. And I feel you can ask any person off the street, about Spider-Man, and they will be like, yes, I know who Spider-Man is. Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey. And I feel like a lot of the kind of golden age heroes of like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, they're kind of B tier, I would say, in Marvel.
Oh yeah, they're not top flight. That's for sure. I was actually very surprised when they announced that this was going to be the first movie in what is now the expanded universe that we've got, and I was really happy about it because I've always loved Iron Man, and then when they announced that they had cast Robert Downey Jr. to play Tony Stark, I thought that there was at least some poetry in their casting, because I thought at some point they were going to do justice to the Demon in the Bottle storyline, which kind of is what his career has been post Iron Man. Like before he had been disgraced because he had drug problems and stuff, and this kind of has this and his wife brought him back from that dark place he was in.
Yeah, it's always nuts. I forget if it was like E! Entertainment or some documentary that it had about him. It was talking about his life, and I was like, whoa. And then when he was chosen or casted as Tony Stark, I was like, man, this is, how do you hit the nail on the head so hard? Like,
yeah,
watch this entire movie. Like, he carries this film on his back, and he's up with, he's playing up against Gwyneth Paltrow, Jeff Bridges.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Terrence Howard. Like,
the fact that he can go toe to toe with Jeff Bridges just in a scene is amazing to me.
Well, Robert Downey Jr. is a phenomenal actor. He just didn't have the Hollywood pull for a really long time because he was all into drugs and stuff, and so it wasn't until Iron Man that he became like a superstar, quote unquote. You guys can't see it, but I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah, it's a good. This is a visual medium, so yeah, the audience loves that. But yeah, it's he's turned into, I guess, quite the tour de force, for lack of a better term, and
which is insane because I mean, right now we're talking about the beginning of the MCU, and then we're kind of rounding around to the end, and it was all started off the back of pretty much RDJ and the Iron Man film. And I really don't know what the landscape of the Marvel Cinematic Universe looks without him.
Yeah, because he's been in almost every single, if I'm not mistaken, Marvel movie since Iron Man in one way or another, either in physical capacity or his voice has been in movies. Like, he's been the one constant through the whole thing, and it was a big gamble to have that be the case, because there was no way of knowing for sure if it was going to be a success when they started.
Well, think about this too, is like with Iron Man, there are no other film adaptations. There was a Saturday morning cartoon thing for a little while, I think by the same animators who did that Spider-Man cartoon.
Yeah, they actually reused some of the animation that they had used in Spider-Man for the Iron Man cartoon.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's cool. But
all right, so I want to talk about this real quick. The only thing that I know of the old Iron Man cartoon is the theme song, which is the sickest.
there's that, and there's also the scene which they pay homage to in Iron Man 2 of the suitcase Iron Man suit, where he falls off a building and opens up the briefcase, and it's the Iron Man suit that is actually, they combine two, because in Iron Man 2 it looks kind of like the Silver Centurion armor, but it's in briefcase form, so they got two with one there.
That's pretty badass. The suitcase suit.
It's crazy because Marvel is really good about throwing in all of those little Easter eggs and little teases and nods. Because while I was watching this movie, obviously the movie starts off as Tony Stark's origin story, and he's in. I'm not sure if they really specify the country, but he's like in the Middle East. He's in the desert. He's riding with a couple of soldiers. They're like yucking it up. You kind of get a feel for his character. He's cracking jokes. He's like, yeah, man, it's cool. Take pictures of me. Don't throw up gang signs. He's like, I'm just joking. Throw up peace sign. It's great. And then, everything pops off when the first Humvee is exploded with some kind of, rocket. I'm not really sure what hit. It just exploded. And then everything's hitting the fan. And then, he gets out the Humvee. He sees the Stark missile. It explodes. And I was just like, man, this movie really like goes straight for the gut punch, like instantly. And like the thing that really wowed me is that I was at work today and I was, doing a little research. I was listening to this podcast, and his origin story is that like it's 100% that origin story has just been updated and upgraded for the times. And I feel like Marvel knows, like, or it's great that Marvel owns, Iron Man and their own stuff, because they're able to do it faithfully, which is something that we haven't really before Iron Man. We didn't really get with other superhero comics or movies.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's cool too that in that movie they actually do keep the old crappy looking armor for a few minutes. And
Oh yeah, dude, that's great. Like one of the funny scenes, which is really indicative of Iron Man as a character, he's always like Tony Stark is a futurist, right?
mhm.
He's always at least, a decade ahead in tech. And, everybody that's vying for his spot or trying to take him down, they can't replicate his armor. They can't replicate what he's able to do because he's Tony Stark. But they always get hands on his tech. So there's one scene where he's talking to Jarvis and he's, building a suit and he's setting up a private server for his information because he's like, I don't want anyone to get get hands on this knowledge, essentially. And then like it pretty much flash cuts to the scene where the terrorists are picking up the original Mark One like cave digger suit out of the ground that he escaped with at the beginning of the movie. And it's just like they're taking his tech, and that's just a common theme throughout all of the movies and also all of the comics that I really like. It is this thing that Tony Stark always has to go through, where he's ahead and he has this tech and he has all this knowledge, but in the wrong hands, it becomes this dangerous weapon that he always has to stand up and fight against.
Yeah, and it's a fun. I don't know if he's like it's not necessarily fun, but for him, like he is the cause and solution to almost all of his own problems.
Essentially.
Yeah, one of the biggest things about Tony Stark is that it's always something he did that's coming back to bite him in the ass.
Well, it's either him or his father, because I guess really like everything he's done is built on the work. So like it's that whole sons paying for the sins of their fathers sort of narrative.
Yeah.
And
they really hit home hard with that in this movie because in the movie Obadiah Stane is like a father figure to him. And it's really nice and touching. Like they have all these great moments together. But then you have the scene where after Tony has dealt with everything, he's escaped and he's come back. And he states that he wants to shut down the like municipal department or their R&D for the military contracts. And everyone's freaking out. And then Obadiah Stane kind of turns on him. And he just like, man, everything's going bad. And he was like, this is what your father built. Like, this is what the company is built on. This is what everyone is coming to Stark Industries for. You can't throw away your legacy. And then Tony's like, well, I just went through this earth-shattering thing that changed my whole perspective on everything. How could I do this? And he has this really touching line where he's talking about his father, where he sits down at this press conference and he's like, I wanted to talk to my father, but I never got a chance to say bye to him. And he's like, I wondered if I could sit down and ask him now, like, did he ever have a moment where he regretted the things that he created, or if he ever second guessed himself? And he'll never get that answer, but it really plays great for his character and also for, I guess, technically the universe at large, where it's like the Stark name is tied to death and destruction, and he has to kind of rectify that in his own way, but in typical Tony Stark fashion, he has to do it with flash and flare and exploding stuff in a giant mechanized suit.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's funny because like that's the public image of the Stark family, and we don't get it until some of the later movies, but we see sort of behind the scenes and how involved Howard is with Become a Shield and the Captain America program. Like he's done a lot of bad, but he's also used like the wealth that it created to solve some of the problems. That it's just the same loop over and over and over again, that both of them are doing good things, but that have bad public outcomes, and then they're going back and fixing those things. Like, it's just like they can't get out of that loop of create problem, solve problem, create other problem, solve that problem, and just like it goes on and on and on. In a way, it's like an older like mythic story. Just like no matter what you do, the solution will always cause further anguish.
I think that's a pretty big theme in like superhero fiction in general. I mean, how many like supervillains has Batman inadvertently created, or Spider-Man inadvertently created?
Yeah.
It's
all of them.
Yeah, and it's funny because like that's, I guess that interpretation of heroes is a more modern one, because when the original myths and things that we know from olden times were created, like there was not this self-reflection about the actions of the hero. It's just he shows up, he saves the day, and it's all good. Um, and so we don't look at stories the same way, but we do. Something you said earlier, Rashad, reminded me of this, that these Marvel movies are very similar to like old mythic stories, in that Marvel and other people like that, they have the story and they keep revising and changing it over time for new audiences. And if you look at myths, that has been done the same way. Like we have a story, and it's like that's how we got the I guess you call it like the hero archetype from Joseph Campbell, where we're going to keep telling the same story over and over and over again because it's a story people like, and all you have to do is make it compelling for the age in which we are currently.
Which is why I feel like certain characters like Iron Man or Spider Man or, the X-Men, they're still relevant to this day, which I don't know if that is a testament to Stan Lee and like Jack Kirby's genius. It's like all you really have to do is just slide the characters up, modernize their origin a little bit, but the characters still work today.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, definitely.
Iron Man was made when, in the 60s?
I think I'm not 100% certain when they started writing Iron Man, but I think maybe the 60s.
Yeah, I know most of the
And the only
original Marvel stuff was like the 60s. Most of the Stan Lee associated stuff, anyway.
Yeah. And the character still works, and they've only really changed the war that he was involved in and the suit. Like the character is still relevant to this day. The same with like the X-Men. Those same themes, those same character flaws, those same interactions with other people, and the struggle that they go through, the hero struggling against the villain and trying to overcome this great adversity. All of those things are still relevant to this day, and they resonate with people. And that's why I feel like these characters are they stand the test of time, and I feel like they're the new mythology. Whereas you'll look back at like Thor, not Marvel comic Thor, but like Thor or Hercules, or most of those characters now are tied into the Marvel universe, but those were the mythic heroes of old, and then now we have these mythic heroes of current day, and it's Spider-Man and Tony Stark. Those are kind of like our...
Yeah. Although I think it is important, like the fact that one of the biggest heroes in the Marvel universe is still, to this day, is Thor. One of the old gods still.
Yeah, you guys should really check out that Super Gods book I mentioned by Grant Morrison. He talks a lot about all of the different ways that the superhero legacy ties in and parallels with old myths, and there's a lot of stuff with the DC universe paralleling with the Greek mythos. I mean, Wonder Woman and those guys all have like direct ties to Greek mythos, and then they've got all the Nordic stuff like Thor in the Marvel universe. So.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's a nice like continuity from old stories to new, that they can stand side by side with modern characters, and people still find them compelling.
I mean, the way they're written, these characters will probably last for another 100 years. It's crazy.
Not to keep harping on things Grant Morrison talks about, but he did an interview with actually I don't remember the website, but he did this really long interview about after writing All-Star Superman, and he talks about how as a mythic character, Superman is like more real than any of us because more people know about Superman than any of us. He has been around longer than anybody who's alive nowadays.
Yeah.
And so he has like a certain reality to him that in a lot of ways is pretty permanent.
Yeah, it's the concept, and I can't remember who first wrote about it. It's not Grant Morrison, I'll tell you that. But the idea of the like great beings, like G with a capital R, great, and how we don't have people now, like because the world is like so flat, and like technology has shrunk everything down so that you can be in contact with anybody and you can learn a lot about just about any person on earth. That we don't have like great people, like actual human heroes anymore. The only way that we can like follow great virtues is in quote unquote great men or women that are like icons of the virtues that we see in people, because we know too much about the people that seek to lead us now.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. I mean, in all honesty, growing up as a kid and reading comic books, I remember having a Wolverine comic and a Thor comic. And as a kid, you kind of are shaped by, especially in this day and age, you're shaped by the media you consume. So I learned a lot of like values and everything, and kind of like to an extent, my moral compass is skewed by the teachings of superheroes and comics, like to stand up for the little guy, to always try to do what's right, to never give up. Those are those tried and true testament things that are in most superhero comic books that I feel like will always resonate with me, and it's always why I enjoy going out and seeing a Marvel movie, because I like seeing the hero struggle. I like to see the hero overcome. I like to see the hero win at the end of the day. And I think that's why stories like Iron Man, stories like Spider-Man, stories like Hercules and Thor and Greek mythology and all these things still stand the test of time, because people want that feeling of hope, because our heroes, stand for something, and they are icons that you want to look towards and look up to kind of strive to be.
Yeah, I think that's in particular why I always felt Iron Man was compelling growing up, because like I didn't start reading comics until after I had read things like Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia, which are like, pretty black and white, like good versus evil sort of scenarios. And you start reading comics, and they're a little bit more complex enough that you can maybe see more of yourself in some of the characters. And well, Tony Stark is a hero by the end of this movie, or like when he first becomes Iron Man. He's definitely not heroic to begin with, and he only gets there through struggle and like hard work. He has to strive to end up becoming the hero that we now know and love. And when you're growing up, you're like in something, you actually have to work to, like, it's not necessarily a given that somebody's going to be a hero, because he could have very easily, especially in this movie, like not done the things he'd done, because he was going against things that his father had built, and like he wasn't disrespecting his memory, but he could have just done nothing and his life still would have been fine. But he chose the hard thing, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean,
one of the strengths of Marvel,
he really became that a hero throughout the movie.
Yeah, they can be flawed, and then they can still be those heroes that everybody looks up to at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's one of those, like, the main conflict that they keep coming back to between Iron Man and Captain America is like Iron Man's always like, I can come up with a solution to a problem, and Cap has this whole like, no, you just have to do the stand-up thing every time, and you won't have to like keep engineering solutions to things. And I go back and forth on where I fall on like that, because like most of the problems that we come up with, I think we can probably technology our way out of it, but maybe we wouldn't have gotten there in the first place if somebody had just done the right thing.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what's interesting about Tony Stark as a character, because he is flawed. He does have issues. Even at the finale of this movie, where he becomes Iron Man, the hero, he still has a lot of demons that he has to deal with. And you see him work through that all the way through Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, Avengers 1, Avengers 2, Civil War. Like, he's still growing as a person, while at the end of the day still knowing what is right and trying to, save as much as he can, while also trying to save himself in a certain extent.
Right. Remind me again, what is the flaw that he had? Like, I know he does something that is really dumb right at the end of the movie, and I can't recall.
Oh, he's about to make a public statement about the whole Iron Man thing, and then he just goes ahead and tells the press that he is Iron Man because he wanted the recognition for it.
Oh, that's right. Because in maybe it's in 3, he does like a mirroring of that scene where he tells the press his address to like tell people where he is if they want to come and take the fight to him.
Yeah, to prove that he's not scared, that he's a hero.
Yeah.
And it blows up in his face literally immediately. Yeah,
because that's when the house gets attacked by the drones or whatever, and the whole thing just goes up in flames. Yep, okay, I remember now.
Yeah, because it was actually a really good scene, because it is so true to the character, which I love. Because at the end of the movie, Coulson, Rhodes, Potts, Pepper Potts, they're all like just read on the card. Just read what's on the cards. We're just going to cover this up. It was just a test. It was just, nothing happened. And he's like trying to read off the card. And he's like, being Tony Stark, so he's very like charismatic. And he's just looking at people, and people like, so you're telling us that you had a bodyguard, like kind of referencing his old secret identity. And he's like, oh, you want us to believe that that's just some other guy in a suit that's protecting you, or so this guy's a hero. And then you see like his ego start getting in the way when he's like stammering over himself, and then he just says, you know what, I'm Iron Man. And that's how the movie just ends.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's great. It's and you said something there that reminded me. Even as early on as this very first Iron Man movie, and granted, they probably didn't know where this was going to go at the time, but Agent Coulson is in this movie, and
this is also where we see Nick Fury for the first time.
Yeah, and it's the first stinger or post credit scene or whatever you want to call it, that he shows up at that famous LA donut shop and says, "I need to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative." And
actually, that was the Incredible Hulk, which we'll be talking about next.
Oh, was it the Incredible Hulk? Man, I'm mixing things up.
Yeah, because the funny thing is, Iron Man 1 and the Incredible Hulk came out 2 months apart.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Which is nuts, because the Incredible Hulk came out 2 days before my birthday. I think it was June 12th. And I remember watching it in theaters. And then he has that scene with Tony in the donut shop.
All right.
And it's so great. But this stinger is when Nick Fury breaks into Tony's house and Jarvis is going nuts. And then he comes out of the shadows like he's a ninja. And he just tells him, I'm ready to talk about the Avengers Initiative. Which I thought was pretty cool, because it's kind of hinted out throughout the entire film. Because I totally forgot that Coulson was in the movie. And he's just here and there just trying to set up a meeting with Tony to debrief him on how he escaped. Because I'm guessing S.H.I.E.L.D. somehow found out that he made a suit of armor. And he's just trying to get this meeting. And he's just like, oh, and then they throw a little hint where it's like, he spells out S.H.I.E.L.D. He's like, oh, it's the Security, Homeland, whatever S.H.I.E.L.D. stands for, I can't remember. And he's like talking to Potts. And then, at the end of the movie, he pretty much, he does say it flat out. He's like, oh yeah, just call it S.H.I.E.L.D. And then right at the end of the movie, you have Nick Fury come out of it with Samuel L. Jackson just creeping out the shadows, just pretty much like, yeah, this is the first movie, but we're leading up to the Avengers.
Yeah,
and I remember being so excited.
Sorry.
Oh no, that was it. I just got super hyped in the theater. Like everybody.
That you can really see with this one that they were trying to stitch the whole thing from it's made out of whole cloth. It was originally intended to be one continuous series.
Yeah, I mean, there's even a nod to Captain America in this movie as well. If you remember the scene in the house where he's building the arc reactor, and he needs something to like level out one of the particle accelerators, he takes a thing. Maybe it is. I thought it was this one. Maybe it's Iron Man 2.
I think it might be Iron Man 2.
I think it's Iron Man 2.
They run together in my head. Well, either way, in one of the Iron Man movies, there's a direct nod because there's a like prototype cap shield.
Because that's the thing, and I have the list. I have it with me right now, but I believe it's like in the order of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies is Iron Man 1, then it's Incredible Hulk, and then Iron Man 2. Like they rounded back to this movie so quickly, and then they got to Thor and Captain America. So these two movies do also run together kind of in my head. That's why I needed a refresher, because I was like, man, I can go off memories. And one of the things that I realized that my memory kind of failed me on, because ever since, the movie first came out and I watched it in theaters, I would always go back to the ending fight scene. And I was like, man, Iron Man is great and all, but the villains are terrible. He always beats his villains in like one quick move that's like a reference to the beginning of the movie, and it's lame. Because I felt like he did that with Ironmonger, and also I felt like he did that with Whiplash in the second movie. Mm-hmm. Only to rewatch Iron Man 1 and be like, yo, man, my memory's garbage. Like, they have like this huge fight in the sky, and like obviously his arc reactor, he has the original one that he built in the cave by the end of the movie, because he needs a replacement for the one that Obadiah stole from him to power up the Ironmonger suit. And he takes the old one, and it's not enough power to keep his suit of armor running for a long time, because it's not made for flight. And they have this big, extended fight, and they're flying through the sky, and then he comes up with the idea to fly up because he didn't, think that Obadiah had fixed the icing problem from flying too high in the atmosphere. And he doesn't, so he falls, and for some reason, that's where my recollection of the movie stops. I was like, oh, that was lame. He just fell and died. But then there's this whole fight on the roof. I was like, wait, where did this come from?
Oh yeah. We had talked about this previously. Yeah, I had forgotten. Like I always just like thought it was like, yeah, he takes him to space and then it's all done. You just like turn him
I
into
feel
a
so
popsicle.
bad for years.
I
For
totally
years
know
I
what
crapped
you're
on this
saying
movie.
about the other Iron Man movies just being like the villains get built up and then it's just like a quick solution at the end of it.
Yeah, which we will get more into in Iron Man 2 because I feel like that's a worse offender.
Oh yeah.
But in this one, I feel like, and I guess we can talk about the villain a little bit. I really like Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane.
Oh yeah, Jeff Bridges was great in this movie.
He's so threatening. He has like this big evil head.
I mean,
it's just so menacing.
He just exists to chew scenery. Like he's just like I'm here and like I'm clearly the bad guy, but I'm not going to say it. Like you're going to have to wait until you actually know I am. But like, yeah, I'm the bad guy. Just from like the very first time you see him on screen, he's so good in this role. It's
I don't understand why Jeff Bridges. Yeah.
I continue to be surprised at the caliber of actor that Marvel keeps drawing in. Like they got Jeff Bridges, and then they got they had Glenn Close in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Cate Blanchett in Thor. Like they just keep getting like actors that years ago I would never have thought would be in a comic book movie. So like they just do. Not only do they do really good with the storytelling, but the quality of actor that they bring in to do the work is just.
I think it took them a while to figure that out though, because I mean I'm excited to talk about the Hulk because that series has been through some stuff.
Oh yeah.
To put it lightly, yes.
What, you ain't like Lou Ferrigno?
I mean, he's cool and all, but
well, actually, that kind of goes into something else I wanted to talk about with Iron Man. Is that with the Hulk, for some reason, he has had several different TV and movie incarnations. Iron Man really only has Robert Downey Jr. representing the character, and that's kind of it. And so, in a lot of people's minds, he is Iron Man. Which
is what I love about the ending of the movie. Like when he makes that statement, it kind of sets up in the Marvel universe like secret identities aren't a thing, and also it really cements him as he is Iron Man.
Well, I mean, he's so much Iron Man that after this movie came out and was such a success, and the subsequent films were also successful, that the art style in the comic books changed to make the character look more like Robert Downey Jr. than he had before. So like he became the movie Iron Man, and then is now the like physical like model for the comic book one as well. So from top to bottom, he just is Iron Man now.
Yeah, I didn't read it, but I think Matt Fraction did a comic series where the whole idea was to like, if you only knew about the movies, that would be your introduction to the comics.
Oh,
yep, that is Iron Man Volume 3, which is the amazing run that Matt Fraction did, which led into the Extremis arc of Iron Man, which the third movie is based off of loosely. And that run is fantastic. They update Tony's origin story in that volume to be more in line with the movies, and then they build it up literally from Iron Man 1 all the way into Extremis. And it's just this amazing run of like, you can't do wrong, like issues of comics. And that's kind of where I jumped in with Iron Man, was Volume 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend reading that. It's so good.
Yeah, I haven't read all that, but I did read the Extremis arc, which is one of my favorite arcs that they've ever done with Iron Man. It's just so good.
Which I can't wait to talk about the movie. Like, this is what got me really excited about doing this podcast, because going back through these movies, I love them all. I have issues with some of them, but like just getting to talk about, like, I want to get to Iron Man 2 because I really want to read Demon in the Bottle. I want to get to Iron Man 3 because I want to reread, like, have a reason to reread Extremis. Like, I can't wait to kind of dig deeper into the movies and also the comics to kind of get back into it. But it's so much good stuff to read, and like so many like good things to dig into, and that's one of the things I'm enjoying about this. Because rewatching Iron Man 1 again, I was just like, the movie ended, I had this big grin on my face, and then B, it's just cool getting to see all this again, because when he first puts on the finished suit after it's painted, after it's all said and done, and he flies out of Stark Tower or his home, it's not Stark Tower yet, and you just have that scene of him flying, and it's just like this childhood like wonderment that just goes over me, and I'm just like, oh, it's Iron Man.
Yeah, it's really great, and like it's amazing to me that this movie was as successful as it ended up being. Like it made $500 million. And do you remember? Like I just looked this up because I couldn't remember, but when it came out, it was competing against Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which
that's not a contest.
No, but it also was out competing against The Dark Knight, and still had the third highest grossing opening weekend that year.
I totally forgot that was the same summer.
Yep, they just they were in the box office at the same time, and it still ended up.
It was a good year.
It was a great year. And if you leave out that Indiana Jones movie,
yeah, I was about to say, except for the
we had already forgotten about that.
As you should. It's a disappointing idea. I hope they never make it.
But yeah, one of the things that you kind of touched on with how Robert Downey Jr. really influenced the character to the point where they modified the comic book version to be more like him. The reverse happened for Nick Fury. So in the Ultimate line of Marvel Comics, which was like this new run where they updated a lot of the Marvel characters in the 2000, I think it was actually 2000 on the dot. They reinvented Nick Fury as a character and turned him into the more Samuel Jackson version. And they just did that just because they were like, oh, I think it was Mark Bagley. I'm not sure who was the first artist to draw the African American version of Nick Fury, but he said, I wanted him to look like Samuel Jackson because Samuel Jackson is cool. Only to, have it 10 years or 8 years later actually become Samuel Jackson in the movies. So a character that was just made to look like him end up becoming him in the movie. It's just like so weird that happened. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's just
that is a good way to, lay the groundwork early.
It's the opposite of art imitating life. It's life imitating art, imitating. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's always it's weird the cycles you get there.
Did you guys? There was this thing that went around the internet for a little while about how apparently years ago in some comic with Deadpool in it, Deadpool makes a joke about how he looks like Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah,
and then Ryan Reynolds ends up playing the character.
So Deadpool is my favorite character of all time. I've read every issue of Deadpool up until probably midway through Volume 5, which is the volume that's going on now. I haven't read a lot of the Marvel Now stuff. I believe it's Cable and Deadpool. I don't know what issue. I'm not that crazy. He says that I look like Ryan Reynolds mixed with a Shar-Pei, and that's the line. And they have that line verbatim in Deadpool.
Oh yeah, it's just in that list of things that TJ Miller tells, like when he says he looked like an avocado fucked a slightly uglier avocado.
Yeah. So I thought that was so cool because when they dropped that line as a Deadpool fan, I was so giddy in the theaters because I was like, oh, he said the thing.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy because it's just a throwaway line. I mean, if like at the time I was reading Deadpool and I was like, it's cool. I know Ryan Reynolds is really vying for, the movie role and trying to get it done ever since like Blade 3. And they're just not doing it and everything. But it was cool to do this little nod in the comic book, only to flash forward to 2014, I believe, when the movie finally got made.
Oh, hey,
and they put that little nod to it that kind of like sparked interest into it.
You know what movie we should never talk about is Wolverine Origins.
Well, see, that's what we do in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Fox and Sony don't exist right now.
Although, to go back to something you just said, you talked about Blade there for a second. Isn't Blade technically a Marvel comic?
Yeah, it is.
So then we're gonna have to talk about the Blade movies at some point.
See, I wanted to see. Okay, so I got something to confess right now.
Yeah,
I love the Blade movies.
Man, like
there's nothing wrong with the Blade movies, man. They're good.
I love them all.
they are not great, but yes, they are good. Like it's just not. I'm not going to hate you for that. There's no. To borrow the phrase from another podcast, I'm not going to yuck your yum.
But
yeah,
man, I just want to watch a guy chop up vampires with a sword.
Oh, yeah. Who hates that?
It's awesome. Some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill. That's great. It's great life.
I completely forgotten. Oh yeah, that's great.
Oh wait, I guess I should have asked before. Are we going to be cursing on this podcast?
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna go back and bleep out every last profanity. I ain't got that kind of time, man. I got a 9 to 5.
So yeah, I looked it up, and the redesign for Nick Fury for the Ultimates universe was in 2002. Brian Hitch was the person that it was a run by Brian Michael Bendis and Mike Allred, and the artist was Brian Hitch.
Okay, cool. Because I know Bendis is Bendis, Mark Bagley, fucking, he wrote Kick-Ass.
I don't.
Irish. Mark Millar,
Yeah.
yes. I don't know. I forgot. I'm like, those guys were pretty much the forerunners of the Ultimate Universe. So I figured it was like,
Yeah, it was Bendis that did this one.
cool.
So.
Because I always thought that was cool and interesting that they kind of like changed the character up. And then for Samuel Jackson to actually play him, I was like,
well, and they even in the comic itself, they have a scene where the heroes talk about who would play them in the movie, and the Fury character says, "Mr. Samuel L. Jackson, of course, no discussion." So it's they at least knew that they wanted to cast him at some point if they could, and they got their chance. That was in 2002. Iron Man comes out, so 6 years later, they got there.
This is so nuts.
Yeah. And then, I guess probably when they wrote the comic itself, it was that would be fun, but that will never happen. And then it did. So.
Lo and behold.
Maybe they already heard the rumblings from Marvel HQ that everything was about to get sold.
I don't know. Like, I don't think as far back as 2002 they were talking about movies yet. I don't think they started talking about that until.
When did the Blade movies come out though? Because that was actually the precursor of like all the Marvel stuff happening, right?
Blade movies came out early, like 2001 maybe, for the first one.
Ooh, wait, the original Blade, 1998.
1998?
Oh, man. That's about the same time that another Marvel movie, Men in Black, came out.
Ooh.
Speaking that blew my mind.
Weird Marvel Universe stuff. Because it has that, they went back, they added the like comic book page intro to it, because I watched it the other day on Netflix for the first time in years, and I didn't realize either that it was a Marvel property.
Yeah,
I had to do a little research.
I knew it was based on a comic, but I never read it before.
So the Men in Black comic was owned by Malibu. I think it was Malibu Entertainment or Malibu Comics. I can't remember. It was Malibu something. And then they got bought out by Marvel, which just made MIB a Marvel movie.
It was originally.
So we were doing a little speculation.
It was originally published by Aircell Comics, that was then bought by Malibu, which was then bought by Marvel.
Oh well,
jeez,
if they are part of the Marvel property, and if Disney owns everything, which they do, maybe we'll have a super mashup where you've just got like every fucking thing in there.
Well, there's like those Marvel mobile games, what's Marvel Puzzle Quest or whatever. Maybe they'll add Agent J,
Agent K and Agent J
to Puzzle Quest or something. They could be part of some obscure branch of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like I would be okay with that.
That's just how they deal with Thanos.
Agent
J comes out and shoots him with a tiny gun.
Yeah, it's Cricket 2, even smaller and badder. But yeah, there was only four issues of Men in Black comic were ever published.
Really?
Yeah.
How did it get a movie adaptation then?
I have no idea.
How did they get 3?
I'm looking at the.
We're getting kind of off topic now.
Oh yeah, I got into a rabbit hole.
But you know what else like blew my mind when I found out it was based on a comic was The Mask. I was like, what? I had no idea.
Yo, and I found out. Okay, yeah, this is gonna be a little off topic, but I found out that comic is brutal.
Yeah, it's supposed to be super violent.
Is it like the original black and white run of TMNT? Because like that's also way more violent than it should be.
It's even worse. Like The Mask is kind of like a serial killer kind of.
Oh boy.
And it looks creepy because he has like this giant smile with those big ass teeth, and he's like doing all this cartoony stuff, but it's murdering people because he's a cartoon in real life. So he's able to pull out chainsaws and throw them at people. Yeah. Somehow they turned that into a Jim Carrey comedy movie.
It worked.
Yeah, I love that movie to death.
But yeah.
So one thing I did that kind of reminded me of the kind of tonal dissonance between the Mask comic and the movie is that I feel like a lot of people always give Marvel this stamp of it's the lighter, funnier, brighter version. But Iron Man 1 is super dark.
I mean, yeah, the only reason that he makes the suit really is so that he literally doesn't die because a bomb he made is slowly working its way into like bits of it towards his heart.
Yeah, and he murders people like on the regular in this movie.
Oh yeah, he's just like, I built a big suit. I'm gonna blow up a cave with like 30 guys inside. It's cool.
Oh yeah.
Like, I feel like at the beginning when he's escaping, it's kind of more ambiguous. So it's like, oh, he shot a rocket, but it just knocked over some rocks and hit a guy. Oh, he punched a guy and he kind of like knocked him over. But then when he leaves the cave, he's like, all right, time to light him up. And he sets a bunch of people on fire with like napalm.
Yeah. There is very little. Well, he's, to be fair, you know, you can make the argument he's not the hero yet. He's just a guy trying to survive, and so like it's fine that he killed a dozen guys to escape because he's not a hero. You know, it won't be until he is a hero that he has to have considerations about the collateral damage of the thing his super weapon that he flies around in does.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was great. And then can we also talk a little bit about how Terrence Howard fucked up royally?
Oh man, I don't know how he screwed up the negotiation so much that he ended up not being Rhodes, but the one time, and it's just he seemed like such a better fit for the role to me.
You think he's better than Don Cheadle? Captain Planet, you don't like him?
I like Captain Planet, but I don't know. I just felt like Terrence Howard was
still happening. I'm down with that.
I just felt like Terrence Howard was a better fit overall than Cheadle is.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
No, I thought he was a good fit for Rhodes.
I think it's just like his physicality more than like his size of person more than anything else. But
yeah, because he gets really dark and then shrinks like 2 feet.
yeah, it's super weird.
In the next
like
movie.
what happened to him in the Air Force that he turns into a whole nother, like what?
It's all those G-force, man.
Just fly a plane a lot and you'll shrink and turn really dark. That's the outcome in this universe.
Which is really that realization is really hard because after Tony flies off for like the final battle, he looks over at the like Mark I silver armor.
Yeah, he goes,
he's like, next time.
Yeah, and then next time is never. Oh man, yeah. Sorry, Terrence Howard. Maybe you should have not been so bad at negotiating.
Maybe he can get a hustle and flow too.
Yeah.
So, also another thing that I thought was interesting I found out was the name of the terrorist who kidnapped Tony at the beginning of the movie. They're called the 10 Rings.
Right.
Oh, is that like
which is
a reference to Mandarin?
Yeah, that's the organization that works for the Mandarin.
Yep, because in the original origin story of Tony Stark, he is kidnapped by a Chinese terrorist group or an Asian. I'm not sure.
It's East Asian versus like Central Asian, where we are here.
Yeah, and they work for the Mandarin directly, and the Mandarin has this huge, like, I guess, involvement in Tony's origin. So I thought it was pretty cool they threw that little nod to him with the 10 rings and everything. Kind of sucks that we know now where it led, but it was a cool thing at the time.
Yeah, and it was just like a nice way, like I guess you'd call it fan service for, you know, just be like, hey, if you know his regular origin story, we're doing that here too. Just it's the same but different.
Yeah, that was a little cool little thing. Oh, I was just going to throw one more thing out that I found in the movie that I thought was pretty cool with my future knowledge. So Obadiah Stane has this sonic paralyzer that like releases this loud, high-pitched noise that stuns people. He uses it on the leader of the terrorists when he does like his big betrayal. And he also uses it on Tony when he takes out the arc reactor that's in his chest. And the thing I thought was cool is the visuals where Tony's paralyzed and you see the blue veins kind of rise up in his face and neck, which is really similar to the paralyzing device in Thor Ragnarok that they use to kind of enslave people. So I wonder if that was like a similar technology. Maybe Tony made like the primitive version of it. I don't know, but I thought it was really cool if that would be a nod back.
That would be. I don't know. I have yet to see Ragnarok, which I need to rectify at some point.
I mean, you have at least 15 weeks until we have to.
Yeah, since we're going to talk about it, I got to see it at some point. But I don't know. Since I haven't seen that, you know, I mean, there's always parallels in technology, you know, across the universe.
I think there's somebody in Marvel, like with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, who's trying to make sure there's a certain visual consistency to certain stuff. So that might be it. I don't know if they meant it like intentionally as a direct nod, but that sounds cool. I need to see Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, is it
Uh
yeah. So is it similar to the like veniness he's got when he's being poisoned by the arc reactor? Because
kind
those
of.
aesthetics seemed similar to me, but
Yeah, which is an interesting thing because we know that these movies are leading up to Infinity War, which is coming out soon. And one of the interesting things is that they have these tiers in Marvel. So you have the street level heroes, which to an extent is the Defenders and also Spider Man.
yeah, because he's like
Then you have like the
he's just in
oh
one,
sorry
in he's just like the one neighborhood. He's a kid from that New York, and like we just do this here, and we don't like generally go to planet level threats.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because the planet level threats are for the Avengers. They handle that. And then you also have the galactic threats, which are by the Guardians of the Galaxy and to an extent Doctor Strange. Even though he's based on Earth, he goes to different planes of existence. And I like those tiers, and I really want to see when they break down kind of like the separation between those tiers. Because currently, right now, due to the fact that there's no Reed Richards, there's no Charles Xavier, technically Tony Stark is the smartest man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, there's no room right now for the Illuminati as
Yeah.
such.
Yeah.
well, Black Panther.
So I really want to see what happens when he learns of light speed travel and the technology that the Guardians have, and the the cosmic entities or the Eternals. Like I want to see what happens when Tony Stark's mind is open to the possibilities that are out there,
We might be getting a
and
little
how
bit
that
ahead of
kind of changed
ourselves
the
here,
landscape of Earth.
but how do you think they're really going to handle the Guardians in Infinity War? Because watching that trailer, I was thinking, they might make them a big part of the movie, or it might just be like they have a cameo where they're like a Deus Ex Machina at the end. I'm not so sure.
Well, I mean, from some footage I've seen, they're going to be at least the vehicle by which Thor is reunited with some of the other people in like the standard Avengers cast. So I don't know if it would make sense for them to just be there at the end. But beyond that, I really don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of all up in the air, but I would really like to see. Granted, who knows if Tony will survive the war, but I would really like to see that kind of change, kind of like the state of the world, where it's like, okay, we've learned that there's this technology, this like space age, all kinds of high tech stuff, and once Earth gains that knowledge of, there's different universes, there's different species, there's, because right now technically they don't know that there's alien life forms, other than what they've seen with Thor and
the Chitauri in
Yeah,
the
got
Chitauri.
They had an alien invasion.
That is true. So I want to kind of see that play more into a part of how it kind of influences how the characters look at it. I feel like the only character that really changed was Tony when he's having kind of like the PTSD flashbacks of the event, the end into Avengers.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll probably develop some more theories as we go over these movies with Infinity War in mind. Any final takeaways from rewatching Iron Man, Rashad? Or
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this movie still holds up. Robbie Downey Jr. is an amazing actor. Everyone's great. The movie's funny, it's snappy, but it's also really grounded in reality and all these like really heartfelt moments. And they're small moments, like when he's just reminiscing in this press interview about his father, or when he's got this look on his face when he crashes his own party and he's having a talk with Obadiah on the stairs, and Obadiah reveals that he's the one that filed the injunction to relieve him from the company, and Tony's face is just flat. Like all these little moments, his interactions with Pepper Potts, and they're like romance throughout the movie, and how they kind of like flirt and kind of like touch at it, but they don't go too far. Like all these little moments that make the character Tony Stark so human, and the world around him so realized. Like Marvel really killed it the first time out.
They did. It was they if they were going to have a successful like universe, which they had, this needed to be a home run, and it was a home run when they needed one. So
so that's essentially the wrap up of what I thought about the movie. I wanted to ask you guys, what movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe are you guys looking forward to rewatching and reviewing?
initially I was going to say Guardians 2, but I just rewatched that. So in lieu of that, probably Winter Soldier is the thing I'm looking forward to the most.
That's a good one.
Winter Soldier, Civil War, Captain America. Love Captain America.
Yeah, Captain's great.
There's other movies that I'm looking forward to talking to for the reasons that I've got stuff I want to complain about. That'll be fun.
Oh yeah, that is a fair reson to want to talk. Like, yeah, because I'm really happy to when we can complain about Thor 2, which is just awful.
But the ether.
I don't care about the red Kool-Aid that floats in space.
Wait, so does this mean we're doing Hulk next? Because I got some stuff I can rag on Hulk about. The fact that they've had 4 different people be Hulk, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah,
so
let's
the
save
next
that
movie,
till we get to it.
yes, the next movie in the line of multiple or plethora of reviews that we have will be The Incredible Hulk.
All right.
So I think that'll be a fun one because it's one of my favorites. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot to dig into.
Oh yeah.
But all right, I think this is a successful first episode, guys.
I think so.
Yeah, it was
happy
fun.
to talk to you guys and do it again next week.
All right. So I guess it'll be the sign off for the To Infinity podcast. We're on the road to infinity. This is the first stop, which was Ironman 1. We'll be back next week, hopefully Saturday, to review The Incredible Hulk. And I hope you guys will join us for that adventure. All right. So I want to thank you two for joining me for this podcast episode.
Yeah, thanks for
shouting. Anytime.
It's been fun.
All right. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
See you guys.
All right. Bye.